What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. We continue to look at the 2021 schedules and project what teams' records could be based off of those schedules. North Carolina is up next, and if you're a North Carolina fan, be sure to subscribe to our North Carolina channel, where we will have a ton of exclusive North Carolina content coming up here very soon. You'll see that pop up on your screen. And to find all of our channels, just go to sg1sports.com/channels. We have, I believe, 21 team channels, and that's pretty much where it's going to stop. We won't be making any more at this point, but we're trying to cover the top teams, the most popular teams across all of college football. And so let's get into this video now. North Carolina for 2021. The schedule in 2020 for North Carolina really wasn't the problem. Their schedule was manageable, even though they did have to play Notre Dame. They didn't have to play Clemson. And really, the only thing that cost North Carolina a shot at a really, really good season was the fact that they lost a couple of games they shouldn't have lost. I mean, they should not have lost those games, two of them in the regular season. They played North Carolina tough for a half, but of course, they did kind of Notre Dame, I should say, kind of pulled away there in the second half. But again, when you look at that schedule, I don't think the schedule was really an issue for North Carolina. We fast forward to 2021, and this is the schedule that you're looking at. It's an interesting schedule. I mean, there are a lot of things to really dive into with this schedule. Before we go game by game, let's look at the games, though, outside of the division. And you've got 4 games that are non-conference games. And I know you see Wake Forest on the screen. Wake Forest versus North Carolina will not be a conference game. I understand that both teams are from the ACC, but that game was scheduled outside of the ACC conference games that the two teams play. That means it won't count in the standings. So North Carolina could lose that game and it wouldn't even affect them in the ACC standings. But we had the same deal a couple of years ago. They did the same thing. There were so many comments about, no, that's a conference game. They're both in the ACC. I understand they're both in the ACC, but it is not a conference game. I know that's very confusing, but it will not count in the standings. That's basically all you need to know. Georgia State and Wofford, not too tough, but they do play Notre Dame again, this time on the road. Honestly, though, I think North Carolina has a better chance to win this year just because I think Notre Dame's going to be take a little bit of a step back. I know it's on the road this year, but still, that's a winnable game for North Carolina. I know they, again, kind of couldn't play with them in the second half last year. I think they'll have a chance this year. And then they play Florida State and NC State out of the Atlantic Division. No Clemson, that's the good news. But I think there's a chance that Florida State and NC State are the two teams behind Clemson in that division. Florida State has a lot of guys coming in, a lot of transfers, including McKenzie Milton, of course. And NC State was a team that started to kind of turn things around last year, and they have a lot coming back. So that's not a great draw, but avoiding Clemson, I think, is always you win if you avoid Clemson. So again, we go to the schedule, and again, there are some interesting things here. It really all starts with that first game, which is on a Thursday night on the road at Virginia Tech. Talk about a way to start out your season. That is going to be a tough matchup. Virginia Tech doesn't bring a ton back from last year, a team that really wasn't that great. So on paper, North Carolina, I think, is clearly the better team. But you're playing on a Thursday night, season opener, on the road. A lot of things could go against North Carolina in this game. This is the type of game that maybe they would not have won last year. We'll see if they can win it this year. They'll play Georgia State on September 11th. And then Virginia on September 18th. Going to look for some revenge in that matchup. Virginia is a team that will be solid this year. I think North Carolina, just like with Virginia Tech, North Carolina is clearly the better team on paper, but it doesn't always go that way. And then another interesting thing on this schedule, there's just all kinds of things. I'm telling you, Georgia Tech, they play on September 25th. That game is not at Georgia Tech, but it is in Atlanta. It's in Mercedes-Benz, in the big stadium in Atlanta where the Falcons play. It's right down the road from Georgia Tech Stadium, but it's not on their campus. I don't really know how this is going to go. I guess I should have done a little bit more research. I don't know if the fans will be split up 50-50 here. Will this still be a home game for Georgia Tech? I really don't know, but the game will be played there, which is very interesting. Big stage, big stadium to play in. And then you've got Duke on October the 2nd. A game that North Carolina should be able to take care of business in. Florida State on October 9th, so they'll have a chance to get revenge on them as well. That was a wacky game last year. North Carolina was clearly the better team, but you saw the potential from Florida State in that game, and this is a Florida State team that should be better this year with a bunch of new guys coming in. So a lot of their production from last year will be returning. This is going to be a really interesting matchup here, and it's right before playing Miami. So you got Florida State and Miami back-to-back, two tough games. But the good news for North Carolina is both of those games will be at home. And I know North Carolina, they took care of business against Miami. They blew them out. But it's a new year. Miami has a lot coming back. I don't think you can look at that game and say it's an easy win for North Carolina by any means. They'll have the bye week after that, which I think is an ideal place for a bye week. Late in October, after playing a tough game against Miami, maybe a tough game before that against Florida State, and it's before a road game against Notre Dame, which is probably the game that you're circling on the schedule as the biggest game. On the road at Notre Dame, October 30th. Perfect time for a bye week before that, and we'll see what happens. We'll see if they can match up better with the Irish this time around. Then Wake Forest on November 6th. Again, not a conference game. I know that is weird, but it is not a conference game. Pittsburgh on the road November 11th. Always a tough place to play. It's not one of the loudest crowds or anything like that. They're just a tough team to play in Pittsburgh. They always are. Wofford after that on November 20th. And then you've got NC State on November 26th. And by the way, let's circle back to Pittsburgh. That is actually a Thursday night game as well. So you've got a Thursday night game against Virginia Tech and a Thursday night game against Pittsburgh. It's very tough to win Thursday night games, Friday night games on the road. I think we've seen that throughout the history of college football. So while both of those games look like they should be games that, North Carolina would be able to win, they're tricky because they're on the road on a weekday, on a Thursday. That makes this schedule a little bit tougher. And then NC State, that one's on a Friday. I don't think this one is as big of a deal because it's after an easy game and it's a Friday, not a Thursday. So I don't think that's really going to be a disadvantage for North Carolina playing that game on a Friday. But NC State, again, should be a pretty good team this year. So a lot of interesting things with this schedule. The fact that you open up with an ACC opponent on the road on a Thursday night. The fact that you have two Thursday night games and a Friday night game, and all three of those games are on the road. The fact that they play Georgia Tech in Atlanta, but not at Georgia Tech. And then the fact that you've got a game against Wake Forest, which is not a conference game. So this is just a crazy schedule when you look at all of that. And it's a schedule that is not going to be a schedule that North Carolina can't get over. They'll have a chance in every game on the schedule. But there are a lot of games where they could trip up. So while if you average out the games, this is probably not one of the toughest schedules in college football. But when you kind of look at all of those different factors, I think this schedule for North Carolina in 2021 is actually pretty tough. I picked North Carolina to go to the ACC Championship in 2020, and a lot of people thought that was crazy in the preseason. They didn't get it done, but I think by the end of the year, everyone kind of saw the potential that I saw in this team, and now we're going to try to project 2021 and see what this team could do. A lot coming back. I know they have some big playmakers on offense that are going to be gone, but they bring in some transfers and some younger players are on the roster, and defensively they have a lot coming back there. So this is going to be a good team, but with this schedule, what will the projection be? Because again, there are a lot of games that you could potentially see this team tripping up in. This is a scale that we use to make this projection, and I want to make it very clear that this is not a prediction. This is not an official prediction. This is simply a projection based off of what the teams did last year, how they played in games, maybe head-to-head last year, where those teams finished, and what these teams have coming back. Those types of things. We're just kind of doing a conservative approach to this, not actually predicting each game, and we go with different percentages here. So this is what it looks like. You've got your 50-50 games. It'll be in white. Less than 10% is in red, 10 to 25% in purple, 26 to 40% in yellow, 60 to 74% in purple, 75 to 90 in blue. And if they have more than a 90% chance, it will be in green. And we're talking about these green games being games where North Carolina will be favored by 20 or more points. Big favorites. And I think you got a couple of them, Georgia State and Wofford. Now, Georgia State's not a bad team out of the Sun Belt. It wouldn't surprise me if that game is not a complete blowout, but I think you'd have to look at it and say North Carolina will be big favorites. They really have no business losing that game, and it really shouldn't be close. So I think you've got 2 easy wins here. Then we go to the games in blue. These are games where I think North Carolina will be favored by double digits, 10 to 20 points, somewhere in that range. And, you know, I know it's a wide range, 75 to 90%, but we've kind of grouped these teams together. And everything in these two categories is considered a win when we do the projection. So Georgia Tech and Duke, I think those are the two games where North Carolina will be a clear favorite. They're clearly better. And I just don't see those two teams really being able to beat North Carolina. It would be a big surprise if they were able to. So you've got 4 games here that should be wins. And then the rest of this schedule, it's filled with a bunch of games where North Carolina will have a chance, or I shouldn't say they'll have a chance, where they will have a chance to lose, but they will be favored. Let's put it that way. Pretty much every game on the schedule, I think they'll be favored. And we go to that next category, the games in purple, the games that are 60 to 74%. And as you can see, that's the majority of the schedule for them. I think they'll be favored by about a touchdown in the majority of their games. But Virginia Tech on the road, opening game, that's going to be tough. Virginia, obviously going to be a tough matchup. They just beat North Carolina last year. And again, we do look at last year at head-to-head when we make these predictions, but you also have to look at where the teams finish. So that's why I still have North Carolina favored against Virginia. I know you could say, well, look, Virginia beat them last year. They've got a lot coming back too. But you look at where the two teams finish, and that is why we have the projection here for North Carolina to be favored in that game. Florida State, same thing. Yes, Florida State beat them last year, but look at where the teams finished. North Carolina, I think, still clearly would have the advantage. Plus, they're playing at home this time. And then Miami, that's a game that North Carolina won easily, so you can maybe even say that that one should be in the blue. But again, look at where the teams finished. Both teams finished near the top of the ACC, and Miami has a lot coming back. I think they may return more production than any other team in the ACC. So that is going to be a tough matchup. But because that game was not close last year, and because they'll play this one at home, I am going to say that North Carolina will be a favorite by 6 or 7 points in that matchup. Notre Dame is let's go back to Notre Dame. Wake Forest, Pitt, NC State, all 3 games that I think North Carolina will be favored in. Just it won't be a huge number, and I think those games have a chance to be close. So again, the majority of this schedule, North Carolina will be favored, but just not by a lot. And it's hard to win. We're talking about 7 of these games. It's hard to win 7 of those type games. When you have a lot of close games, usually you don't win them all, and that's why you're going to see the projection not put this team at 11-1 in just a second. But Notre Dame, the final game, I think it's a 50-50 game. I'm really struggling to make a prediction myself on that game. I don't know who I would favor. I think on a neutral field, I would probably lean towards North Carolina. I think they have a little bit more coming back, and I just think the ingredients are there for them to beat them this time around. But playing on the road, that makes that one a little bit tougher. And so I really don't know who I would favor, but it doesn't matter for this video because it's going to be in the white either way. This is a 50-50 game, a game where I think the spread will be 3 or 4 points. It will not be a lot, and both teams will have a great chance to win this one. So again, you look at this schedule, and when we do the projection, the blue, the green, those are wins. Then we average everything else out. So Notre Dame will be a 50% game. The purples will all be 60%, and I understand some of these would be higher than 60%. Wake Forest is probably closer to 74 than it is 60, but just again, the projection that we use, we go with a really conservative formula, and when you plug all those games in, like I said, you're not going to expect North Carolina to win all 7 of these games if you're just averaging them out. The projection for North Carolina does come out to 9-3. 9-3. So out of these 8 games, and we're going to throw Notre Dame in with the purple games, out of those 8 games, the projection would say, because they're going to be slight favorites, they would win 5 of those 8 games. They would go 5-3 in those 8 games, and they would finish 9-3, which I know is a little bit low for what North Carolina fans are hoping, but I think it's a fair projection. Again, you look at just last year, the close games that they lost, they could lose some close games again this year. I don't know what I'll predict for this team. I don't think it'll be lower than 9-3. It might be 10-2. I might even go 11-1. I don't know. But 9-3, I think, is a very fair projection just when you look at this schedule and the fact that they could lose more than 3 games. They could lose to Virginia Tech on the road. They could lose in a revenge game against Miami. I'm telling you, Miami has a lot coming back. They could lose on the road at Notre Dame. NC State on the road. That could be a tricky game at the end of the season. So I could see this team really, I would probably, if I had to say right now, go somewhere between 8-4 and 10-2. I think you're pretty safe if you pick this team to go in that range. And what's in the middle of that? Yes, 9-3. So 9-3, the projection for North Carolina. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think this is high or low? Give me your thoughts down in the comments below. And thank you for watching this video.